right.
I
Do
have
we
a
have?
suggestion, Madam Chair.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I didn't see on the agenda something about updating us about both the regular budget process and the capital budget process, so I was hoping we can ask for a status update. Yep.
Great idea. Um, and do we have public? We don't have any public in the room, no? Any public comment from commissioners?
We're good.
All right. Minutes.
Where was Megan? Oh, Megan's on now.
She's on now, yeah.
Yeah, Megan just joined.
I'm hoping that she edited because there was a lot that could be edited. I just put in 2 comments.
I did make one change, which was at the bottom of one of the pages, it said the town's destiny. I think it was supposed to be density. Yeah, right there.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
What shall the destiny?
A density child, yeah.
Right.
I still think that would have been a great band.
Yeah.
Density's child and the missing.
But before we change, this could be a good conversation.
So you would pause for a second on the first comment I made. Emily, was that you? Are we watching your screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
On the
So there
first
was,
page.
in the middle of this discussion right there, there's a thing about, yeah, we're talking about the sports dome. And then it says at the bottom of the page there, Chapin Cater made a motion to sign the municipal planning grant resolution form. I think that form was for the USPW or WP, whatever that is, the Chittenden County grant, but I didn't see it on the agenda.
That might have been a. It was a carry. A
Was
carry.
it left over from a previous meeting?
Yeah.
So that was just an error. That paragraph needs to come out. And I did it as comments, not as changes.
Any other comments?
I made a few little minor edits, but nothing.
Yeah, I'll move we adopt the minutes as amended, the November 18th minutes as amended.
All those in favor?
Aye, did you get a second? Yeah.
Yeah.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Any abstaining?
Abstain.
Jill abstaining. All right. Why don't we do, well, sorry. Why don't we start with Lily's presentation since that is next on the agenda, and then we can do a quick update on budget. Is that okay, Matt?
Mhm.
All right, Lily.
And I'm just noticing that Wilmer is being promoted to panelist who's on our planning commission. Are you able to join the Zoom thing so you can screen share?
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks for fighting for our kids, Wilmer.
Hello, hi. I'm sorry if something was being said. I couldn't hear it because I was
I was
transitioning.
just thanking you for fighting for our kids. You shouldn't have to, but thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're here.
I'm not sure I'm able to share, but join as a panelist.
Yep. I will stop sharing.
It's sorry, where is it? On here, like,
The green button.
oh, yeah, there's a. Said I had to send a request.
Should go through.
For anybody who just joined, Lily is getting on as a panelist so she can share her presentation.
It wants me to quit and reopen. So,
Matt, do you want to do that? Let's give Lily a minute. Do you want to do the budget updates?
Yeah, so if you were looking at your email, you would see that I just forwarded a capital budget from Eric. So, he sent that out this afternoon. And my proposal would be that we'll put together a comment memo, probably based off of the preliminary memo that you all drafted about a month ago, and start taking suggestions on that between now and December 16th. Also, if the commission wanted to appoint a non-quorum group of folks, no more than 3, to come in and chat with staff about that, we could meet over the next week or so to work on that comment memo. But I'm guessing it would be good if we prepared a memo that the select board could have following the December 16 meeting, just given the timing of everything. I haven't actually gone back to Eric and asked when he thinks they'll be making their final decision of what goes on the town meeting warrant.
I definitely think we should have something that we can hopefully agree on next meeting to send over. Would folks prefer to do the small group of 3, or ask staff to really just base it off of what we wrote, what we submitted previously?
How
How about a combination?
Did you have to drop off and get back in?
yeah.
How about
Okay.
staff base it off what we had written and then be reviewed with this group of 3?
Yeah, we'll do something to get folks started, but you know, if there's a small group that we could spend a little more time with in the next 2 weeks, and then the whole group can see everything ahead of the December 16 agenda.
The capital plan is only 93 pages and I'm on my iPhone mini, so I'm not gonna try to comment right now.
All right, do I have volunteers for the 3-person crew to go in and chat or Zoom and chat with staff about a draft memo?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, that's one.
Certainly. I've
Steve-
tried very hard not to volunteer.
Steve, Shayla.
Need one more. I will do it. I will always do it if others just don't want to, but because this is my favorite topic. Anybody
I
else?
would totally do it, but the next 2 weeks is just super busy. I have to
Terrible.
grade all of Lily's papers for one thing, so.
Sorry about that.
So I'm sorry, this is just not the time of year that I can
Always a
help.
good excuse.
All right, Chapin, I'm a lot, and unless Wilmer, you would like to come, which you are so welcome to do. You know budgeting better than most of us, even though you haven't done this one yet.
I'm happy to help if needed. Yeah.
Would you like to do it? Otherwise, I'll voluntold Chapin.
Oh no, I'm okay with having voluntold someone else.
Okay, I will voluntold Chapin this time. So Chapin, Steve, and I will do it. And we'll look for.
Do we want to see if Hannah, Kessler, or Mickey are available and then volunteer Chapin?
Sure, that's a great idea. Do you mind?
Let's leave it in Shayla's hands.
Yeah, we'll get an email out to the smaller group, winnow it to the appropriate size, and then go from there.
Thank you very
Sounds
much. All right.
And I'll be frank that the reason I was trying not to volunteer is that I care,
Oh, for your own good.
but I've cared about so many things over the years. I don't
Yeah, cool,
I
good.
don't want to get cynical by caring too much and then not having success. So I'm wanting to pull back a little bit for that reason.
Yeah, we'll do the first few slides and then keep it.
I guess it also doesn't have to be 3. It can just be Stephen too. All right, but we'll see what Hannah and Mickey, if either of them want to do it.
Sounds good.
All
And I
right,
just wanted-
Lily, are you? Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to note that what I've forwarded you does also include the operating budget
Yes.
transmittal. If anybody's interested in that, you don't have the same statutory responsibility to comment on that, but Eric encouraged everybody to kind of look at both as part of the bigger picture of what's going on in town.
Are there any flags for us in that you
We
saw?
cut your salaries to balance everything.
That's not allowed. I'm not allowing that. Matt, is there anything in there that's particularly that we should look at in particular?
I don't know yet.
Not yet.
Came in
Okay.
at 3:50
Okay.
this afternoon.
What have you been doing since?
I biked home in the snow and it took a very long time.
Okay, Lily, how you doing? Yeah, we're in. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, so I think Melinda and I will kick this off. So we had the lovely opportunity of having Lily official with us this semester. This project all got started a couple years ago. There was a triplex development that went partway through the permit process, a couple rounds with the development review board, all the way to the point of getting ready to file final plans when they found out that there was a deed restriction limiting the lot to a single family dwelling. So rather than a lot that could have a duplex on it by our zoning, or a triplex by our zoning, it's limited to a single family dwelling. And the lot in question is at the corner of Hurricane Lane and Route 2A in this site plan photo. Since the changes in state law with Act 181 and recent bylaw updates that we've made to make it possible to have more housing density on small lots, streamline the permit process, we have seen an uptick in a lot of infill development questions. However, we've come to realize that many of these older subdivisions with lots that are suitable for duplexes or triplexes or fourplexes are also subject to some of these private restrictions. So jumping over to the next slide. Was how we came up with the project goals of yeah, project scope. So Williston is a big town in terms of land area, but our development priority zones are relatively small. And we began by excluding certain areas like the growth center. There's a lot of large landholders that are professional developers. They have the capacity to answer these questions on their own. Whereas a lot of the smaller properties are amateur applicants, single family home owners that are just for the first time entering the permit world. So we decided to exclude the growth center because private developers reign there. And also a lot of those lands are constrained with non-compete clauses in leases that are private lease agreements that we don't have access to publicly, or at least not very easily. We also excluded areas outside the sewer service area because this land area will not meet the bulk of our housing goals. We also limit lots to 2-family structures and the cost of construction is quite high there. We also excluded industrial and gateway zoning districts. The residential zoning district and village is quite large. They're shown in the beige and orange color on the screen. And we really honed in on that yellow highlighted zone, which is the northwest quadrant of the residential zoning district. Primarily neighborhoods off of Route 2A, and some of the neighborhoods near Kirby Lane on North and South Brownell roads. These areas represent some of the oldest PUD subdivisions, 1960s, some even going back, have lots that started in the 1940s or 50s. So it's areas with the oldest subdivisions, and a lot of those regular lot patterns that could fit those duplex or triplex units. Yeah, which brings us to,
That was foreshadowing.
yeah, which brings us to,
There is a difference.
There is, go back,
yeah, I think there's 3, yeah.
there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, you wanna do that?
Okay. So basically, the overall goal of this project was to provide some critical information to property owners who wish to subdivide or develop their properties. And for us to gain a better understanding of the nature and extent of covenant restrictions that might present a barrier to future development. It was also a goal of the housing committees to find out more about these restrictions, because they actually would like to do some outreach to property owners, in the hopes of maybe changing, sort of being able to undo some of those restrictions, if possible.
Who's they?
The housing committee.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, this more specific goals were research private association covenants and deed restrictions. Locate those documents in the land records, summarize restrictions by subdivision and by type. And just basically to compile a searchable database.
Can I ask a boneheaded question, just to make sure I understand this? So this particular piece of property that we were looking at a moment ago, that where a deed was discovered that we weren't aware of. Can you kind of help me understand what that actually means? I mean, like, how does the deed supersede current development efforts from a sort of historical point of view? I don't really follow that.
Private agreements almost always, if they are more restrictive than the town's rules, are going to prevail over what somebody can do. So the town might be permissive about keeping chickens in your backyard, but you might live in a subdivision that has a deed restriction on all of its created lots that says no backyard chickens. And we, the town, by passing a permissive rule, cannot undo that.
Okay. And so from your historical background, having seen this before, what would lead someone to impose a deed that says under no circumstances will this land be subdivided or?
Well, when, things like the Civil Rights Act and the Fair Housing Act came along and prevented discriminatory practices from being implemented through zoning, those practices or practices that look a lot like them migrated into the world of private covenants and agreements. Also just sort of from the dawn of suburbia as a thing, people who were developing suburban places, even going back to, the pre-1920 era, were trying to create neighborhoods for people who wanted to sort of quote unquote get away from the city and whatever the city things were that they didn't like. So whether it was other people or dust, noxious fumes, or what have you, even some of the oldest suburban subdivisions in the country, that are over 100 years old, will have covenants against certain things being done.
So keep the density down.
Yep.
If we can do it. Okay.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, and have that level of certainty, like you are buying a house and there will only be other single family homes around you and they will all look a certain way and the properties will operate a certain way.
I gotcha. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And sometimes restrictions are put on to satisfy those who would approve a development. So for instance, this is gonna be an elderly housing development, you have to be at least 55 to live there, might help get, if this is like 30 years ago, would help get some developments through.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I'm particularly interested in learning about these types of like restrictions and covenants. With my geography major and interest in urban and rural planning, that's something that's very important for planning. And yeah, so the internship program that I'm in right now is the Communities of Practice Sustainable Urban Planning through the College of Arts and Sciences at UVM. And so students are placed at internship sites based on interests. And so I specifically wanted this project because of its focus on covenants. And then there's also a class component that focuses on the planning process and community engagement, and we meet once a week. And so my goals for this project were to understand different land use restrictions and their effect on planning, collect and organize data found in land and real estate records, analyze and understand restrictions and covenants, and work with professionals to examine the local community environment and help produce results that support solutions such as infill housing. And so, yeah, this research relied heavily on archives and using archival documents like the land records in the vault next door. So how I went about this was I picked 3 parcels, 3 different addresses from each subdivision. For these parcels, I looked them up in the Williston parcel viewer map, found the listers cards, and through that I was able to follow the chain of title of deeds, starting in the online records and then in the town clerk's vault. So going through the vault, going through the books, taking out the deeds I needed, printing and scanning them, and then cataloging them in Excel. And then I reviewed and analyzed the restrictions. And so,
Lily,
And a
you
lot
have
of
a
time.
question.
Yes. Is this the process that the town does when a person comes in with their request to make a duplex on their land? Like you have to go and do all this archival searching?
No, the onus is on the applicant when they submit a permit that they're submitting true and accurate and complete information. But more and more recently, when we get these perspective comments, the first thing we tell people is go to the town clerk next door and look at your deed and see if there are any covenants or red flags. But an applicant, they're attesting that they're submitting accurate information to us.
The other thing is, we can give somebody a permit for something that's prohibited by their subdivision covenants. We have no responsibility to enforce those covenants. Rather, we have a disclaimer on our permit that says private agreements may apply. You should.
Oh, so you can do
probably
your
go
side of the
check them.
paperwork, then they have to follow up on their end.
They do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the onus is always on the owner.
How long does that process, like if you were to go to the clerk, can they do that in 5 minutes, or is it like come back next week?
No.
They'll show you the computer.
And as Lily and I learned, Lily spent a lot of time in the
Yeah.
vault. I think it's what the mid-1980s when the scanning ends and you have to
Yeah.
physically pull the book out of the vault, clip it open and scan it on the flatbed scanner to get a digital copy.
Wow.
Yeah, it did take a long time to get.
Yeah.
I will say
We
that.
need a whole army of Lilies to just bring us into the modern day with documentation, huh?
Yeah, there's more than 300 something files in this spreadsheet that I have a screenshot of. So yeah, it was a lot of scanning and organizing and yeah, figuring out what I needed. So yeah. After looking through the deeds and locating some restrictions, I find that the more common restrictions were use restrictions that designated properties for single family and residential use only and would say that there are no subdividing of lots. And then additionally, other more common restrictions were architectural design restrictions, restrictions on temporary structures, so like no trailers on lots or anything that resembles like a temporary dwelling was a lot of the language I saw. A lot of, not a lot, but some of the subdivisions have restrictions against livestock and animal breeding. And they also have minimum cost restrictions and then often restrictions about waste, trash, and dumping. And then some less common, but no,
Excuse me,
sorry.
what's the minimum cost mean?
Like the minimum cost of the construction of a unit or the sale of a unit cannot be less than, let's say like $18,000. And yeah, so that was there for a couple of them, like larger
That's
developments.
interesting.
Yeah, going what Matt said earlier about, stratifying neighborhoods.
Yeah.
It was, you can't buy the cheapest mobile home and plunk it on the lot.
Yep.
It has typically, yeah, like $15,000, $18,000 was pretty common.
Did you find any with minimum size of the dwelling?
I wouldn't say minimum size like requirements, but there were a lot that just like outlined this property should be a 2-story or 1-story with a garage or, but yeah, it didn't like say they must be this size.
That's one that some subdivisions will use to prevent, for example, single wide trailers or even a double wide, is they'll say, you know, there must be a footprint of this size or greater. And then that just de facto, you know, prevents typically mobile or modular homes. So I wondered if that had shown up in Williston at all.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely the minimum cost, and then there were other like architectural elements that were restricted or more specific. And then some notable restrictions that I found were in a couple separate subdivisions. The first one I found like especially interesting was this subdivision, Gallup Hills. They stated in their covenants that purchasers of lots must maintain at least 2 sound hardwood trees per lot, and no hardwood trees can be removed without written approval. I thought that was interesting. Another one from Williston Hills was clotheslines must be located to the rear of all buildings constructed on lots in inconspicuous locations. Thought the word choice was interesting. And then another one, which I found especially interesting, was purchasers must maintain or install water conserving plumbing fixtures. In this specific development, I think it was South Brownell Estates, but yeah, I thought that was also fascinating.
On the middle one there, was it just a typo? Did they mean in space conspicuous locations?
I
That's exactly the opposite of what you think they would intend. They're saying you have to put the clotheslines behind the building if it's in an inconspicuous location.
Oh, doesn't it mean like and inconspicuous location?
yeah, probably.
I think there's supposed to be an and there.
Oh,
Okay. So the lot doesn't have to be in an inconspicuous.
Oh, no, yeah, not the walls, but yes.
Okay.
And the low flow fixtures, going back to Chapin's comment earlier, I think some of that does come out of those Act 250 permit conditions about environmental conservation and water conservation.
Yeah.
Nowadays, everything you can buy is low flow.
I know there was a lot of discussion about that a few years ago.
And so now I'm just gonna go over a couple examples of subdivisions I researched and the restrictions that I found. So first we have Brookside Terrace, and I went through the town clerk's vault and was able to find a bunch of warranty deeds and a declaration of condominium, which is basically when they just outlined the purpose of the subdivision, and sometimes there's restrictions in there. And for this subdivision, there were restrictions inside the declaration that stated that units could not be subdivided into 2 or more units, and the subdivision is restricted to residential use only, which was one of the common restrictions that I just mentioned.
Where is Brookside Terrace?
Foxwood Circle.
What's the name of the street?
Foxwood Circle, it's off of Industrial Ave, between the Allen Brook and Route 2A.
Yeah, okay, that
On the north
on the
side.
north side,
Mhm.
okay.
And so this next subdivision is Country Crossing Clusters 1 and 2, located on Hideaway Lane. And for this subdivision, it's also restricted for single family residential use, according to the declaration. Next we have the Gallup Hills subdivision, Stirrup Circle and Morgan Parkway. Within the declaration of the subdivision, there were restrictions regarding minimum cost for the sale of dwelling units. It also mentioned that lots could not be subdivided and are restricted as residential. Residences are single family and purchasers must maintain a minimum of 2 hardwood trees on the lots. So yeah, this was one of my favorites. Thought it was interesting.
It is interesting.
So next we have GW Savage Corporation located off of River Cove Road, including lots on Savage Court. According to a 1994 deed, no trash is allowed to accumulate on lot 1, and no more than 1 unregistered vehicle is to be kept on lot 1 at any given time. I did not find restrictions for other lots.
Really interesting.
That must have been one of the pre-existing
Yeah.
properties or homes.
Yeah, it is a larger lot, I think. But yeah. Next, Lamplight Acres. This one's a big subdivision and there are no restrictions I found within the deed, so.
Maybe there should have been some.
Yeah, so that's great.
Restrictions against F-35s flying over.
And then-
Yeah.
Here we have some examples of applications for the building permit from 1966 for this subdivision. We just thought it would be cool to include. Yeah.
Yeah, back then they just gave us the little cut sheet from whatever builder's catalog. For the floor plan and the architectural style,
Really?
yeah.
I've approved permits with worse looking floor plans than that. Really important when we look at an older subdivision like this, because we are looking at a significant chunk of town where there's relatively large lots. Homes are aging. Some of them have been kept up, some of them have not. There was a home recently in Lamplight on a nice big lot that experienced a pretty catastrophic fire where, something will be rebuilt there. And we have had inquiries from a handful of homeowners in a place like Lamplight say, I've got this single family home on this pretty big lot. And I'm thinking about maybe making some changes to it or doing a major remodel, or, is my only option an accessory dwelling unit, or could I do something more? So really useful to know that about restrictions in a place like Lamplight.
Yeah, and then we have another example of floor plans and clippings.
That's what they look like.
Yeah, that drawing just makes you just kind of want to move right in, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, did they only do one garage door on that one?
Yeah, I guess they crossed it, yeah.
Minor amendment to the application file.
And then next we have Meadowbrook. It includes this kind of bigger area, including Pinecrest Circle, Stony Brook Drive, Country Lane, Essex Road, and Hickory Hill Road. Within this subdivision, there is a declaration of protective covenants. So here they outlined a minimum cost for construction and sale of dwellings. Lots are restricted to single family residential use only, and no livestock is permitted in the subdivision.
Lily, how do they do the minimum cost if these were, these must have been done a long time ago. Does the cost stay the same or does it update with inflation, or what's the?
Some of them will say like per 1965 prices, and I assume that means that when the prices change, that number, like that also changes as as prices get higher. And then some of them it just said the minimum cost and then didn't elaborate really. And usually it was for the quality of materials and to ensure that the property was created with craftsmanship. So that's what they said usually regarding the cost.
Those are mostly on the lower end of square footage and cost of homes.
Oneida Acres, there were restrictive covenants as well for minimum costs of construction. And also they outlined that only one residential structure per lot can exist and they cannot be subdivided. Also no fowls except for domestic pets are permitted. So they didn't say livestock, so I wanted to include the original language.
Yeah, and for inflation calculator, $15,000 in 1965 would be $156,000 today, so. Building an equivalent home in today's prices would be double, if not triple that.
And then, yeah, here we have some old application for Oneida Acres and floor plans. And yeah, a little statement from the company, the Bowling Green Model Raised Ranch Design.
Yeah, what does it say for the construction costs on the left-hand side?
18,000. Yeah.
Nineteen sixty-six.
Next, Onion River Park, we found no restrictions within the deeds. And then River Cove Estates, there was a declaration of protective covenants and it stated that there is a minimum cost for dwellings in the subdivision. No lots are permitted to be subdivided. The lots are limited to one single family home and again, no temporary structures. And South Brownell Estates, I thought this restriction was interesting too. The restrictions are that only one single family structure is allowed per lot and water conserving plumbing fixtures are to be installed and maintained within the units. And there's also no burning of trash and other materials from April 1st to November 30th every year. So I thought that was interesting.
There's also no drilling.
Yeah.
I mean, as a current
Oh, the
restriction
plume.
because of the
Yeah.
plume.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't know if we told you that one, Lily, but that neighborhood, there was, an industrial waste dumping issue on Commerce Street that contaminated the groundwater. So it was an EPA brownfield.
Superfund.
Superfund, that's the word I wanted, Superfund site. So there are restrictions in that area on like drilling. A lot of folks like filled in their basements after that or don't have basements in new construction.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. And then for the last example of the subdivisions I researched, we have Wilson Hills. There were protective covenants that pertain to this subdivision. Like a lot of the subdivisions we've gone over, the structures are limited to single family residential use only. There's a minimum of cost for the sale of dwellings. No livestock is allowed or temporary structures. And this was the one where clotheslines must be located behind buildings. And yeah.
That one has some wonderful old trees on the lot too. I wonder if, but there was no.
Yeah, there was something about the hardwood trees for Wilson Hills. Maybe there should be. But yeah, so next steps to this project is continue to analyze documents and fill out the research report, which I'm currently doing. It's almost done. Yeah, next I guess the restrictions can be mapped by type. And then I know Emily and Melinda were talking about repeating this project for other areas of Williston. And yeah, and also it's important to, you know, I feel like recognize these covenants and see like where, I don't know how they affect planning further and infill housing development. And so yeah, that's yeah.
It's a big deal.
Good job.
So that was-
Thank you very much, Lily. Yeah, it was really great. I had no
and then
idea.
to say thank
That
you
was
to
not
Emily and
good.
Melinda. So they really helped me a lot with this project and very great mentors, so.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a pleasure having Lily with us and.
Yeah. Did like a whole lot of work.
Yeah, it was a big bite that you took on, and we're really appreciative of all your hard work.
Mhm.
So is that something we can't, like, we could ask those subdivisions if they wanted to change them, but we can't, we have no control over that whatsoever.
Yeah, I
Can we
don't,
like make it so that people can't do that in new developments?
I mean, so is it true that like today, I mean, there can't be any restrictions that violate fair housing laws? Like,
right, so. Where the law has gone most recently, and some of the impetus for this project was to really restrict what municipalities could impose on residents and owners, right? Municipalities may not prohibit duplexes in anywhere they allow residential, fourplexes anywhere that there's water, sewer, etc. So that's a restriction on the power of municipalities. We're creatures of the state. We're a Dillon's rule state. If the state says that's the limit of our authority, then it is. I don't know that as a municipality, we would have the authority statutorily to ban certain types of restrictive covenants, although I think there's a legitimate purpose within your zoning authority to do that, possibly to say, hey, we're looking at this new subdivision. We don't want you to restrict people who are in this subdivision from doing any of the things that, we allow in this zoning district. I don't know if that's been tried anywhere. We've certainly incentivized things before through the growth management system, that maybe we didn't have the outright authority to require. It's also, other than under fair housing, it's fairly hard to undo existing stuff. So, obviously the both federal and state Fair Housing Acts actually invalidated some provisions that were in existing covenants. You can have a subdivision that still has a racial covenant on the books. It is no longer enforceable. But I think unless the state explicitly does that around some of these like further subdivision or single family only, I'm not sure that we can do it on our own as a town. It's a really interesting question.
But we can incentivize if we want.
Yes, I see Megan has her hand raised. I do want to note that the right to dry law, which passed I think in 2009, where things restrict the outside clotheslines, that state law undid those association covenants. So I think it would be a similar state level action where our zoning authority comes from Title 24 and property is Title 27 in state law, and the Uniform Common Interest Ownership Act of 1994 is 27A. So it's a different section of statute that the authority comes from. Megan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you, Lily. I've been hearing little bits and pieces about the project all fall semester, so it's really nice to see the completion of it. I guess, especially given what Emily just said about the right to dry law, basically invalidating those subdivision agreements. It would seem to me like the new state regulations that passed recently about anywhere you allow single family residence, from now you can build a two-family residence. Like, isn't that enough to supersede these restrictions, or is that rooted in the sort of like private contract piece?
Yeah, I don't think it's enough because it really just limits the town's authority to restrict, you know, to have those restrictions in our bylaw. So I mean, it'd be a good question, I think, for legal counsel to like, and then get into, how these might be undone either if they could be undone by state laws. Or by municipal law, municipal ordinance or bylaw amendment or something like that.
Yeah, it seems like it wouldn't be long before there could be a sorry, I was distracted by Shayla saying goodnight. It was very sweet. It seems like it would make sense for or it would be, you know, it might come to pass quite quickly, that quite soon, that like Matt was saying, where someone would set, you know, propose, well, I want to knock down this house and build a triplex, or you know, I want to build another unit on this large lot I have, but it doesn't meet the accessory dwelling unit kind of characteristics. I'm kind of surprised that we haven't had that yet, given the pressure on affordable housing, you know, in Williston and other towns nearby.
Well, it sounds like we did. Isn't that what? That one.
Yeah, I've had some like hallway conversations with Josh Hanford at VLCT and Jacob Hemrick at DHCD. And I think when this report is completed, reaching out to them and sharing this information, because it would be a totally different can of worms to amend Title 27 and change these restrictions. But it could be something they could take interest in, and if we can show them this data to run with, is kind of follow up to a little pie in the sky conversations I had with them about it. The second thing I'll note that came up in this research is, as Lily and I were looking through the chain of title, sometimes these deed restrictions and covenants aren't referenced in the newest of deeds. You have to go back a couple owners to find them. And some of these are so old, they were set up with the intentions of the original developer, but they've not carried forward. So if there can be some sort of sunset rule where if you haven't been enforcing them or upholding them, they go away. And I think that's where we found a lot of people, or I've had a couple of conversations with people who are like, oh, this isn't referenced in my deed, it's 3 deeds back, is it still valid? It's like, I don't know, that's an attorney
That's an
question.
interesting question. Yeah.
I mean, the other thing that would be interesting is to see, on these, in these subdivisions with restrictions on, or, you know, that basically restricted to a single residential structure. If any of those folks have, developed ADUs or, you know, like. Have like another residential structure in their backyard, despite the deed, restriction, I don't know.
Lily, I'm curious, kind of a wackadoodle question here. You may not have gotten into this level of detail, but did you notice any commonalities around builders? In other words, if no birds except feathered pets are allowed, did you see that like in a particular builder? I mean, could you track it to that level of granularity? Yeah.
You could, yeah. I mean, all of the developers are usually like they're either listed in the deed or they're listed in like previous deeds. I wouldn't say they were like specific restrictions from specific developers. It was usually just like the larger like construction companies were the ones that had these kind of restrictions laid out. They were very like, I don't know, like corporate organized, like usually the smaller developments that were like individuals that weren't huge companies, it was only a few restrictions, like this lot can't be subdivided or it's restricted for single family use only. But a lot of the more extensive restrictions came from larger, like construction companies, larger subdivisions, so.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you.
I have a related comment, that's not about your work, which is great, which is that the town digitized the records back to 85 or whatever it's at now. And then had a budget item to do more digitizing to make us more efficient, like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it
remember
didn't
that.
pass in the budget.
Yeah.
And so just to make a note that there's been interest in doing that, but it costs money to do it. But then it costs money to research too.
Yeah. Yeah, it is tens of thousands of dollars to have those records professionally digitized.
Mhm.
Yeah. Lily, thank you.
Thanks.
Really good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lily.
Thanks.
All right. Any last questions before we move on to CCRPC? All right. Anyway.
You're welcome to stick around, but you're also welcome to get out of here. I know you have exams to study for. Yeah.
I will see you tomorrow.
Yeah, see you tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
And you as well.
Who's lead on CCRPC?
You want to
Oh,
kick us off?
I'm sure. Yeah, so it's the time of year again when we're applying for projects under CCRPC's UPWP program, Unified Work Planning Program. We have, I think, a couple of things in mind. One of which is the development of an active transportation plan or bike ped master plan. We, as you know, we applied for a municipal planning grant to do some of that work, to do the public outreach component. We don't know if we'll get the grant or not. They're supposed to decide pretty soon, I would think, but anyway. We are also going to apply for UPWP funds to do the bulk of that work. So that would be a big ticket item project, but because it's an active transportation plan, it could be done funded mostly with their transportation funding dollars. And with the town pitching in 20% match and CCRPC funding covering the rest of it, we, sort of a ballpark cost of an active transportation plan is between $80,000 and $100,000. So it'd be a pretty big project, like I said. So that's one thing.
Is this the old Creamery Road meeting? No, you want to go next door, upstairs in the town hall meeting. Thank you.
And then, let's see, what, help me out here, what are some other things? We, sort of a project that we would like to, work on. I don't know if it's gonna be through UPWP, but we started to think about the, community housing infrastructure program, the CHIP program, and how it might be used here in Williston to further our housing goals and to support affordable housing. And there are, several like properties scattered around town that we want to kind of investigate a little bit to see if they might be a potential fit for a CHIP project. And so we'd like to actually start doing that before next July. So we might, kind of do that work on our own, or if there's some assistance that CCRPC can provide through UPWP, you know, that we could ask for that. Don't quite know what that would look like yet. And then just to let you know also that the Oak Hill Road study that was done this past fiscal year, CCRPC will be doing a phase 2 of that study in this fiscal year, but not until spring. So that will not be something we apply for next time. It's gonna get done this year.
I think that's most of it.
That's great.
We had a meeting with Public Works staff, yesterday and talked a little bit about what their requests are gonna look like. They're pretty actively engaged in trying to make some particularly bicycle pedestrian infrastructure connections in town. And what I'm starting to see is just that we're really starting to better position the town as a whole to pursue those projects and, you know, take them from scoping through to design and implementation. Maybe a little more rapidly. Money's always gonna be the challenge, but at least procedurally, it seems like we're getting a little more coordinated and give all these pieces of plans. We know what's been scoped, what's been designed. We had the walk audit in Taft Corners. We've had the official map, the form-based code, and all of these other things that we can pull from to get this active transportation plan off the ground. And then operationally start talking about what piece of those active transportation projects does planning do? In other words, do we get it through scoping and then hand it to Public Works for design? Do we get it through design and permitting and hand it to Public Works for implementation, contracting, that kind of thing? So some good pieces of that are kind of coming together around that project.
Also, one more thing, the Williston Road multimodal
Yes.
path. We would like to do sort of the next step in advancing that. We talked before about additional scoping of wetlands and other environmental constraints. But we're having some internal discussions about that. I think, you know, we've gotten some messaging from Public Works, like, you know, they don't think that that's really necessary, that we could move forward with design, you know, that basically if the select board were to choose an alternative, a preferred alternative, we could move forward with some design and then, you know, eventually construction. But the select board would need to select an alternative. And so the idea of further scoping and environmental constraints would be to provide them more information about, particularly about wetlands, so that they would be better informed to make that decision. But yeah, you know, it's a little bit up in the air.
I feel as though there's a big decision of whether it goes on the north or south side of Route 2, which has to do with the number of crossings, the amount of infrastructure that interrupts it, and wetlands. And I feel like there will be a much bigger cost. In other words, you could just get a cost estimate for the two, and you'd probably know the right way to go, because if you're going through wetlands or across too many infrastructure points or driveways, the cost goes up. And so even if we don't do any, just from what you can see,
Yeah.
just what we know.
And they did give us some rough cost estimates, sort of
Okay.
partially based on, you know, what you could
Yes.
see from.
Yes, and I've mentioned this before, I have friends in the Commons, and I have scouted out where I think there could be a very nice question mark shaped 2-lane, so that the downhill fast people are not coming face to face with the slower uphill people, 2-lane thing on the south side. But also, this group was interested in having that study continue through the village, because we want it to connect to where the Federated Church, where the current rec path comes out. We want it to be access to the village, not just ending at the beginning of the village. We have a hand up.
Megan.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, thank you, whoever is pushing these along. I'm really happy to hear about, the bike ped piece, the um, just all the mobility focused work. I'm so excited to see those things coming to pass, including obviously the one closest to my heart, Oak Hill Road. um, and I really appreciate the sort of strategic decisions that have to be made. I'm sure it's not, it's not easy to know when to jump on something or when to seek further either public involvement or expertise. And so just kind of general appreciation first. And I guess this is a very minor question, but I will just raise it because it had been mentioned a while back, actually, in response to some earlier conversations about Oak Hill Road from last summer. I had asked about a more region-wide attempt to get those standardized 4-foot passing law signs up. And at the time, Marshall Distel at CCRPC had said, "Oh, that might be something to put into the work plan." And so I just wanted to kind of come back to that. And I realized that might be, I think he probably meant on a broader, maybe like all of the region approach. But I would love to just, I think Williston has the potential to be a leader in that and getting more of those signs up. And, they're so important for educating drivers because there is no other mechanism for drivers to learn about the 4-foot passing rule. And it does a tremendous amount if they cooperate with it, it does really make the roads so much safer, not just for cyclists, but for pedestrians and runners and so forth. So I just wanted to mention that Marshall had at some point pondered the possibility of having a region-wide approach to the signage, and maybe there's an opportunity in here somewhere to remind him of that, or to kind of put it in weave it into our request, or something along those lines. So just kind of throw that out there.
Yeah, I can definitely, we can definitely reach out to him and ask him about that.
Can we go?
Sorry, Sheila, there's at least one more of those 4-foot signs. I think it's on North Williston Road.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think we have a sign before you go down the hill on North Williston Road saying that bicyclists can take the lane or sharrows, and it really should be. And I've noticed that since it was repaved, it has not had the shoulder repaired, so it's very dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody tries to stay to the side too much and they catch a wheel on the edge, they're going to crash.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would just say, like, we need a comprehensive look at lots of different spots. The Strava data is flawed, but it is at least partial in terms of identifying where people do ride bikes or run. And there are other mechanisms to figure out, like, what should the priorities be, right? Like, we can't put these on every single street. What should be the priority spots? And my thought is, like, instead of this piecemeal process where Megan's been complaining about Oak Hill Road for 15 years. Oh, we finally got her a sign, right? Like instead of that approach, which I'm grateful for, but is not sufficient, right? That we should have a much broader, really region, ideally statewide approach for these kinds of, this kind of information sharing. That is our state law to leave forfeit passing. And so in my mind, like there's got to be some responsibility to communicate that both, with whatever mechanism is appropriate. Thank you for listening.
What went into those think don't drink signs that you see that I was surprised by when I moved here? That's a law, but it's like you see them all over. What's the coordination that went into those? It's like, could you do something similar? Because those are pretty ubiquitous in small towns and bigger towns and drive-through towns.
Don't drink and drive.
It's like, yeah, it looks like a wine glass and a bottle in it, and it says think don't drink. I see them all over, and Vermont's the only place I've ever seen them.
So is this just about transportation, or are we choosing it to be about transportation?
All right, can I just go back to, before we move on, I want to just go back to the path. So if we're not going to do like whatever the wetland study is, which is fine, if Public Works doesn't think we have to keep studying, like great, let's go. What do we do next to make that keep moving? Because I'm, again, like totally defer to you all and Public Works if we don't need to continue to study it. But I don't want to then, I would like to then know what the next thing is that we need to do on that project to keep it moving.
So the next, select board needs to select a preferred alternative, and then further design work, like getting I don't believe we can do design work under the UPWP program. So we would probably have to apply for grant funding to do design, either the Transportation Alternatives Grant Program or the Bike and Pedestrian Program. And I believe those grant applications come out in the spring. So that would be the next step, I believe.
So we would want the select board to look at it before the spring, so you had time to apply for those grants.
Yeah. I mean,
you talk about them selecting an alternative. Do you mean from what was already presented?
yes.
Like that was just which side of the road, pretty much.
Well, it was,
Oh, yes.
the sides
How
of the
far
road, and then
from where to where?
some of the alternatives were more separated from the road versus ones that were just alongside the road. So I think there were 4 alternatives in all.
So can we put together whatever that, would we do that presentation, or would the folks who did the study?
I feel as though if we're asking the select board to do that, we should be asking them with our recommendation attached. And I'll volunteer to be on your subcommittee for that, to make the recommendation of which alternatives to ask to recommend to the select board that they approve.
I mean, the other thing is that we've sort of toyed with the idea of doing more work internally, using the new wetland maps, to try to kind of further suss out where the greatest wetland impacts would be, and therefore, so it might be possible to do that. But
So my question was, you answered my questions as we went along, Melinda, about where did the Oak Hill study fit and where did the rec path between the Taft Corners and the village fit. And all of it is good, but is it our intention, or is it the only option to have this be about transportation?
you mean for the UPW?
Yeah.
the transportation funding, is more, well, it gives us a greater,
Okay,
amount of funding.
okay.
But we can certainly do we can do land use projects.
I'll mention the thing that the question that's on my mind. We've identified that at Taft Corners, there should be shared infrastructure for stormwater. There may want to be shared infrastructure for ground source heating. There, we know we want a community center somewhere. We know we might want a transit center there. We already have plans well underway for a road. Is there a place for being advised by the CCRPC or a study being done to help us make progress on how to do that? Since it feels like we have good ideas, but we don't know. We've talked about maybe having whatever zone. So that we can use future taxes to pay for it, to have a TIF district, but that's just sort of a general financing thing. Are there more specific things that we could or should get help on that could move it forward?
So outside of the Unified Planning Work Program, we've been offered some resources related to an existing RAISE grant. RAISE is an acronym, and I couldn't tell you what it stands for, that CCRPC is doing right now. And it's related to the Taft Corners area. So it's a little bit related to evaluating some of the performance of the form-based code. What I've sort of fed back to CCRPC is that we're interested in working with them and pulling some help in on that project, but that it's a little more about that broader vision that you just mentioned. So not just in the form-based code area, and integrating some of these other things that the town is talking about, like TIF, like community center, like somebody wants to build a sports dome in the mixed-use commercial district by exit 12. How should we handle that? Depot Street, the police barracks building, et cetera. So I don't know exactly what that's all going to look like right now. We're in communication with CCRPC staff and just said, yes, we're interested. We have some ideas. We'll let you know. And then they'll tell us how much of that might fit their scope.
And so that's a better avenue for that kind of preparation work.
Well, it gets us started on it right now. I think some of the other stuff too, some of the more planning related stuff, we brought in professional help in part through either grants or CCRPC on some of these really big lifts we've had over the last couple of years. So with the form-based code, with the village, et cetera. The zoning bylaw actions in the new town plan, I think, are mostly ones that are going to be best shepherded through by the staff. We may want to bring in a designer or somebody to draw some renderings or things like that, but those aren't generally things we get much of a match out of CCRPC on. And we ought to just budget for them and go hire someone to help us.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit my opinion, but a little bit also just that I think we can be a little more fast moving on some of the planning initiatives at this point. And maybe the focus of outside help is shifting more towards, number one, transportation, in part because that's where the money is and because those projects are so hard to do. And then secondly, maybe when we move more into this sort of like housing and economic development function, where we're trying to actually, like study some chip sites and make some projects happen. But I'm finding that some of those things, rather than run it through the CCRPC and jump into that fiscal year cycle, part of my narrative to the select board around our operating budget this year is to say, we're ready to just start asking the town for funds to conduct those studies ourselves, or to just directly hire people to do them. And sometimes the CCRPC might be the service provider, but it may not all be through UPWP.
So on transportation, I do have, I don't know if it's worth mentioning in the application, but there's
I'll be all right.
biking in the snow.
Just gonna look weird for a second.
So I have two pet things that are not on our biggest plan for off-road transportation. The first is to connect the rec path that right now goes through the village and ends at Old Stage Road, and then you're on roads going through South Ridge. to connect that to the rec path coming from the other school. So that all students can go to school without riding on hilly streets that have cars on them. That to me is a priority. And another is to work on the north-south corridor through the CERT highway right of way to get, so you can ride a bike from Route 2 to Mountain View Road without going on Route 2A, or without, we have a off-road way to get there. And that's gonna be more important with the developments that are going in off Mountain View, on the south side of Mountain View, and including Glacier. So to me, it's a key part of infrastructure we shouldn't give short shrift to. And so I don't know how much we should mention those things, or whether you just say we need a plan and they figure that out. But to me, those are on the list as priorities in addition to all the other ones.
Yeah, when we start on the master active transportation plan, public input is gonna be a really big part of that. It's gonna be like right up front, so
Yeah,
there will be
okay,
definitely time and space to
yes,
provide that kind of input.
okay. Thank you.
Not to be annoying, but I still don't understand how we're gonna move the Wilson path forward. Do you need us to do something, or do you want to come back with an idea of like what you think the best plan is for taking to the select board next meeting, or?
So, as we were talking about, I just reviewed the communication we had with the manager and the public works director over the last month, and I think where we're at is it's not environmental review like going out and delineating wetlands. It's tallying up versus the north and south side alternatives to say which of these, basically roughly, how many feet of wetland impact, wetland buffer impact, how many crossings. Du Bois and King, please help us come up with some numbers for these things. And it's a lighter weight project than the
Yeah.
scoping study, but it's to give the select board a little more solid
Yes.
information, be able to return to them and say, we just need you to pick a preferred alternative. So, this is a big project. It's not a project that's set up for any funding in the capital plan right now. I just went and looked because I was curious. And, part of Public Works's narrative in their capital budget this year is to say, we've got an active transportation plan coming. We expect to have some project prioritization. And then, essentially saying about, all projects other than this one, that's kind of the trigger point, is to get that active transportation plan adopted and decide what we're all working towards. With this project, it's more, we just need to get this alternative picked and we can start programming in how are we gonna pay for it. And there's been that discussion of capital funding, but there's also been that discussion of this project is kind of moving along ahead of the active transportation plan. Is this a bond vote next year? And I think that's the right question for the town to be asking about this one. So anyway, we will clarify, there will be some kind of request in CCRPC's FY27 Unified Planning Work Program to sort of get us over the hump and get the select board making a decision on this so we can move forward with that design permitting environmental review stage.
Great. Sorry. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Nope, it's good.
Any other CCRPC before we go to growth? All right. Last item.
Yeah, so real quick, this is just another one of those things. I don't know if Emily and I have ever shown you one of these growth reports. But the select board started asking for these a couple of years ago and just saying, hey, staff, well, we're thinking about our operating and capital budgets. Can you give us some kind of a picture of what's coming down the pike for new growth in town? And if you go on, I don't know, Emily, if you could screen share it just off the website.
Is it in the select board packet?
It's in the, no, the current one's not there yet because I'm not done writing it. but I just wanted to show last year's, so planning and zoning, I want to know more. And annual growth projections.
Yeah.
So if you just wanna open up like the,
Mhm.
whatever the 26 to 30, this is the one we prepared last year. And this started off with the select board really asking us, how many more people can we expect in town? And so we do try to communicate a somewhat informed guess around that, but also sort of couch it in a lot of information about is people, number of people really the metric you're most concerned with? Or are you concerned with things like demographic aging? Are you concerned with retail traffic? Are you concerned with other changing things happening in the town? So we do still give them what they ask for, which is some kind of a population projection. It's keyed to household size and what we know for dwelling units that are planned. So that's the, the top line, is, based on what's in the pipeline, you could add 1,384 people over the next 5 years. You won't, but you could. Um, and the reason for that is in the paragraph below the two bold bullets, which is just that our predictions continue to really overestimate the pace of growth. Projects take a long time to get off the ground. We know about them for a long time before they get started. And when they do get started, they tend to build at a fairly sedate pace. And that has been our pattern for some time. It could change eventually. If it starts to change, we'll make note of that. But it's just a reality of not everything in the pipeline gets built, not everything gets built as fast as we think it might. And then, of course, the other thing is, that over the 5 year prediction period, based on just the sort of projecting out the rate of the decrease in household size, you lose 200 people every 5 years as households get smaller. And that's true out across, the census projection that runs out to 2050. So
And
households get smaller.
ADUs and things like that might level that.
If we permitted more than 6 ADUs a year, I'd start worrying about population growth.
In a bad way, I mean.
No, I mean, I agree, in a good way, and so we don't talk a lot about ADUs in this, just because it's such a small number. As much as I love ADUs, my prediction for the state of Vermont as to the amount of impact on housing supply that new ADU creation will have, I think will be relatively small. And it just has to do with not every homeowner wants to be a developer, not every homeowner wants to be a landlord. There's a lot to it. It's a big project for people to take on sometimes. So,
And septic and construction costs, people just, to make the financing work for it, it's really expensive, even if it is a small ADU.
yeah, that's another thing is almost anybody whose house is on a septic system is facing a huge permitting barrier and probably the cost of upgrading their septic system to create an ADU. And folks have advocated in the past for some rule changes with DEC that would make that a little easier, but that has not happened. So going down, what's on the next page?
Just a moment.
Yep.
All these petition numbers are based on previous growth. Is that how it works? Because I saw you say 1.7 and previously it's 1.63. So is that how you say it, or based on the number that you see in front of you in terms of permits and everything?
So the number of people we're basing off of the number of permitted dwelling units and how many of them we think will be built over the next 5 years. And I'll show you that in a second.
But it's based on data that in front of you.
Yeah.
Forward looking.
So we're looking at the approved subdivisions and where they're at in their building cycle and trying to make an educated guess about how quickly they might build. And if you think population growth is bad, what we're presenting is a worst case scenario.
Matt, a question, just more out of interest than anything else, but for context. The things that you look at as an organization, when you start building trend data about where we're going from a growth perspective. Clearly, those permitting numbers are gonna be very indicative of a lot of information. Do you look at other things as well? I mean, do you look at things like general migration trends in the country, east to west, that kind of thing? I mean, does that play in at all, or does that kind of get distilled down into the dwelling numbers that?
I think where we are right now is we're best served looking at the real numbers of what's being built. Because what's being built is a reflection of the private sector serving the market
Okay.
and dealing with the conditions under which they're building, right? So the high cost of everything, et cetera, limited land and all of that. So, I mean, you know, in some regards, I think if you could build 1,000 houses in Williston next year and sell them at a price where people could afford them, I think you could get 1,000 new households in Williston. But that's not happening right now. And we're probably a long way off from where we would run into the limits of, well, just how many people are willing to come live in Vermont anyway? Which is a great question, you know, when Kevin Chu is talking about 800, wanting to have 802,000 people in Vermont, which is, you know, around 200,000 more than we have now. It's a great question, like, well, are there 200,000 more people that would want to come here? What does the jobs picture look like? And now those things start to build in. But on the micro level for Williston, you know, people will come live in what can be built probably. So I think we're a ways away from that, and we would see the market react to those trends locally in the speed at which these places build out. So, you know, watching the speed of like Chris Snyder's project, the Annex, where, you know, everything's ready to go. Things are being built. They are being built, we hear, a little more slowly than was initially anticipated. And part of that just means how many people in Vermont are ready to buy a $815,000 three-story townhome. It's a relatively small market right now. If that market gets bigger, we would see that existing project accelerate.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So what we've got on the screen here is just literally the names of the projects we know about and how many dwelling units we think are coming. So if you go, so we can see the top of it, Emily, so just see the column labels. So this was last year, and we were saying, well, what happened prior to calendar year 2026? And what do we think is coming? And so this is, in some cases, like Finney Crossing on the top line there, you're seeing the very end of a project, right? It was the last 38 unit building. And now it's all zeros. So actually in the upcoming report, Finney won't be named anymore because it's done. Cottonwood's a different story. There's been, you know, the 81 units that were built some time ago. The balance of units that are coming, we just keep pushing them toward the end of the 5 years because it doesn't feel like very much is happening there right now.
Is Cottonwoods, are they filled? Are they feeling successful with that? Is that why it's being pushed or not?
We're just not seeing any activity there. So they've leased up what they have. They seem happy with that. But there's not been a big push to continue with the development of the project. There will be eventually, something will change. But we don't see it as imminent. The other thing that's just kind of evident is we've broken it out geographically. So the numbers, both the, you know, number of units in a project, and number of projects starts, you know, bigger in the growth center. It's kind of in the middle in the more suburban RZD and is quite a lot less, you know, a lot of single digit or, you know, 1 or 2 home projects down in the ag rural part of town where we don't have sewer. So, you know, looking at just a handful of those right now. So if we were estimating that we might see 18 Glazer homes occupied by the end of fiscal 27 last year. It could happen. They'll be moving dirt before fiscal 27 starts. Maybe they'll get 18 done. My guess is probably not. Just because that project hasn't started building infrastructure yet, and that usually takes a pretty good chunk of a construction season. McCullough hasn't gone anywhere. There's no new homes under construction right now. Is there a foundation at Sally's Way?
There shouldn't be.
I don't think there is. I think they've been doing infrastructure for like a year and a half.
Yeah,
Alaire is the project that Lily's presentation started with. And it was approved for 2, and it can't be 2. Right? It would be restricted.
yeah,
So we'll dial that down to a 1 and then try to figure out, well, what year do we think that 1 is gonna show up? So this is just kind of the, under the hood, like the way this works. Going on from the residential build, we try to make some predictions about commercial. It's a little harder to do that. But as a measure of intensity and a way to compare residential and commercial, both produce vehicle trips, and everybody likes to complain about traffic, so we do try to talk about it a little bit in that regard toward the end of the report. I don't know if you can find that. This is like the back page. Yeah, they're just looking at non-residential build out. So if you're looking at some of these things, Finney Crossing Hotel 2 is done.
yeah, we still have Robert. Lot 1, lot 2 is done. Lot 4 is still under construction. Lot 5 is done with the mini storage. Aldi's never gonna happen.
Finney Building A will be fully occupied early next year. Cottonwood A1 is
Okay.
in the cloud. I don't think the Trudell office expansion is gonna happen.
I think they did a smaller expansion
Yeah,
instead.
They like converted some garage space or something.
Yeah,
Annex senior living can come off this list now.
Really?
Oh, no, sorry, no, I meant Finney. Annex stays on,
yeah.
but it's probably a ways out. Kia car dealership,
I think we'd have
probably-
to check that permit might be fully
that might be
expired.
expired. So, this is trying to do, again, a 5-year outlook, about 300,000 square feet of new buildings and about 500 new PM peak hour trips in the transportation system. And part of giving this context is because oftentimes people, when they want to talk about traffic or express fears about traffic, they're talking about residential projects. So the big number to remember about residential projects is 1. So a single family home typically produces about 1 PM peak hour trip. So all of this commercial development would be like a 485 unit residential subdivision. And you can imagine what we would hear if somebody proposed a 485 unit residential subdivision in Williston right now. And we would certainly hear about traffic. So keeping in mind that different kinds of development just have different impacts on the town, and taking this a little step further, so I'll be preparing this over the next week, bringing it to the select board at their budget hearing on Saturday. Continuing to think, when the select board's thinking about budget, growth is part of the picture, changing trends are part of the picture. The other part is, well, what are the sources of cost? So it costs public works money to plow and repave miles of street. We don't plow and pave houses or commercial square footage. We plow and pave miles of street and sidewalk. So There are growth patterns that can result in lots more street and sidewalk showing up in town. And there are growth patterns that can place that growth on existing streets and sidewalks that we are already plowing and paving. One of the foundational principles of smart growth, right, is, make your development pay for itself. Emergency services, 51% of the town's budget. Well, what's the source of that? Where does the demand for emergency services come from? It's not a one-to-one with each commercial square foot or each dwelling unit. It has to do with lots of other things that are going on. Some of which the town has control over through land use policy, and many things that we don't. We cannot control the Interstate 89 run through Williston. We can't control the fentanyl crisis. Just to name a few. So part of this is to just sort of talk about what's happening in the town for growth and help the town think about planning for some of those bigger facilities needs and things like that. But the other part is to kind of remind everybody, this is a piece of the picture. But this isn't the only driver of increased cost. The cost of health insurance for employees, thank you.
And that was why I asked, what you just said is why I asked the question. It was, what are the other sort of non-linear drivers that we need to be thinking about, or impacts that we need to be thinking about?
Right. But it's good to kind of have an understanding of where your town is headed and how it's changing physically, demographically, and the raw numbers are useful. But we try to present this in a way that these numbers, to me, shouldn't be scary for a town of 10,100 people. If you were a town of 1,500 people and you thought there were 700 coming in the next 5 years, that would be a big deal. But that's proportionally not what Williston's looking at. So I will send around the updated one as soon as I have it done. And if folks have questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Matt.
Yeah.
It looks like Megan has a question.
Yeah, I really value what you just said about kind of keeping things in perspective with information such as the commercial development and what that can do to traffic, or just as a way to kind of give people information so that there is less of the sort of knee-jerk reactions that we often see. And another source of that is the whole if we grow, we're going to have to build more schools problem. And so I just wondered for this, if this report is going to go go public, maybe there could be a little section on kind of misconceptions or frequently asked questions or something like that, so that a lot of those kind of knee-jerk reactions or just really a response that's rooted in a lack of information, so that those can kind of be, I don't know, so we can get out in front of them a little bit. I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, well, the member of the planning commission suggested that I'll throw the cumulative number of homes and school age population graph from the town plan in this somewhere, and just footnoted exactly like you said it, Megan, because I think it is important for people to have facts about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And even though the select board doesn't have a lot to do with the school budget, we know we're intertwined with them. And certainly we're intertwined in people's minds about the relationship between growth and what's going on with their property taxes, or how easy it is to drive to the grocery store.
Right.
Cool. Well, we'll give you the new version of it in time for next meeting.
Thank you. This is really helpful, really interesting. Appreciate that.
Yeah, any suggestions folks have, been showing you this, I showed you the way our quarterly reports work last time. Melinda and I have talked about doing one tracking some of the housing targets. We're really starting to feel like this all ought to be on a dashboard somewhere. And I don't know if any of us have the graphical horsepower to make a really good looking sort of Williston dashboard. But that's the direction I'd like to move, and I'd really like anybody to be able to pull something up that just quickly gives them what I've given you in these sort of a little more overwrought
Yeah.
documents eventually.
You remind me of EAN's dashboard, the Environmental Action Network. They devised a dashboard that any town can use, or that they maybe even pre-set up to track energy things in a dashboard format, and I just wonder if there's a way to tie into something that already exists.
Yeah,
Probably not that, but
yeah.
their idea was to create something general that any town could use. It could load numbers into, and then it would work for their town. Shayla, I have a parting comment when we're done.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I probably should have said this during public comment. I was quoted in the paper last week as sort of being pro developers and being pleased with the idea of a sports dome in a district that isn't zoned for it. And of course, it didn't say why I believe that, which has to do with having recreational opportunities near the growth center. We're trying to have people live without cars. But so it's a little bit out of context in that regard for me. And then there was a front porch forum criticism of how the planning commission is all for developers. And I'm thinking, it was based on reading that article, and I, who was quoted in the article, was against the glacier specific plan, and I have not been pro developer by any means. So those kinds of nuances, it's sort of not appropriate to comment in the public sphere about our business. We let the work speak for itself. But I just wanted to say I'm aware of that sort of place, and I don't mind being there, because if somebody asked me, and I know the person who wrote that front porch forum criticism, and if I meet up with her, I'd be happy to explain. So I just wanted to point out that happens, and that it is what it is. It is what it is.
Let me add to you, I asked around at the office about that drone case.
Yeah.
Many positive.
Yes.
Look forward to it.
Other people responded to it by saying, "Oh, I would love a sports center there."
Almost everybody that I talked to.
Yeah.
Say that, such a thing will be very beneficial.
But what I would like to do is enlighten the conversation online about why it would be beneficial to have it there. One of the things that was mentioned by one person is, it'll help our businesses because parents will drop their kids off and then shop and stuff. All that may be true, but the reason I want it is for people who live there. And granted, it would be open to anybody. Anyway, so I feel like there's nuance that would be really nice to add the conversation. I'm restraining myself from doing anything like that.
It's so hard to bring that nuance in, and obviously people who, all of us who work in this struggle with that. All the time, and it's the kind of thing we can write about in our Planners Corner newsletter at some point, particularly if that proposal starts to kind of feel like it has legs, or if we end up, as I suspect we might, having that proposal and others be the impetus to take a look at the land use regime in that part of town and do a little bit of visioning around it, which is a great way to then go out and engage the community, those who are for sports domes and against sports domes and whatever else, and say, okay, community, here's what the town plan says, and here's how we might want to work within that, and check in with all of you about, okay, you're worried about traffic. Do you know about the plan for Depot Street and a signalized intersection? Maybe you're still worried about traffic after that, because all you heard is we're gonna put another traffic light on Route 2A. But you can bring that in, or you can bring in, well, it wouldn't happen without being connected to this grid of streets, or it might by itself not trigger a traffic apocalypse, but long-term, we would want to be, staying on top of those challenges. So there's lots of ways we can use tried and true planning process and public engagement to bring people in and do that. And the thing I always remind myself when I'm, Sunday afternoon and I'm reading Front Porch Forum and I'm like, I want to email this person or I want to post a Front Porch Forum and say, take your time, we can organize our thoughts around it.
Put it in the planner's corner at the
Yeah,
right time.
put it in the newsletter, or it becomes part of a public engagement session at some point, and,
Well, and again, these
You
are,
know,
these
air
are
it out.
public meetings for a
Mhm.
reason.
Yeah,
If you have a concern, come to the meeting. That's what it's for. That's what it's for.
I also find, and when, there was like more happening on Facebook 5-10 years ago, and, really trying to come up with some idea of like, well, gosh, how are we gonna engage with this? And the answer is, my answer is just don't.
Oh, you mean you should post there's gonna be a 380 development, not 380 development on Old Stage Road?
It's
Hypothetically.
Right?
hypothetically, it's far better to use a media outlet that you control and where you can, not let the narrative get away from you, and also where you don't end up in a, a one-to-one, conversation with somebody. So, you
Yeah.
can,
And I do like that people pay attention.
yes.
Yes.
That, in other words, I would not want to shut people up. I just want to inform them more.
What I don't like is, as I have said many times, that social media is in many ways analogous to somebody standing on top of a tall building and throwing firecrackers into the crowd below. Because there's no recourse. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. And that's the reason, you can't throw them back.
Yeah.
You know?
But the other thing is, if you have to engage on social media, if you have something like the planning department website or Planner's Corner, and you can say, you can post to social media, and we do this with Front Porch Forum, and say, hey, we just wrote a newsletter with these things in it. Please feel free to go read it, and it just takes the temperature down, and it takes people off of that. I must respond, right now. It's like that guy staying up late, and his wife says, "Why aren't you coming to bed?" And he says, "I can't. Somebody is wrong on the internet."
I thought Eric did a good job when there was all the talk about the library being something that nobody wanted and hadn't been planned right and all that. His response wasn't to respond to that specific thing, but just to say, just so you know, here's the process we're going through. And he just reiterated the whole process of the library planning.
Yep. And I think stay the course on that.
Yeah.
So I don't know that the dome will go forward or not. It's obviously a very preliminary idea, but it sparks a conversation about that part of town, and I think that's good.
We should use that as a catalyst for looking at the whole area, like what you
Yeah.
say. And then if we even wanted to say this is where the public use area that we wanted to have, that it might initiate other developer also to consider
Yeah.
an
Yes.
area for different purposes,
Yes,
right? And which will benefit the town itself in
yes.
totality.
Yeah.
So that's how we should do that. Yeah.
That would be planning.
Thank you for hearing me.
Always. Megan, go ahead.
Yeah, I apologize. I missed the last meeting. And I just wondered if the annual report had been approved or if we needed to vote on that or what the status is. Needed the update on that.
We remanded it to the committee.
Who remanded it back.
With a couple of specific requests.
Yeah, and Steve did a great job editing it, and we gave it back to probably about a month ago, maybe at this point. And so I was thinking it would have been voted on in the last meeting, but then I wasn't there, so I wasn't sure what its fate was.
We may need to bring it back and just have you all vote on it. I know we didn't do it at the last meeting.
No, but did
Okay.
it get updated from when we were?
Yes,
Oh,
it's
Yeah,
been
we updated
updated.
it. And I can resend it to y'all if it went
Yeah.
on into the void for
Please,
some
there's
reason.
Yeah, but October 21st, reviewed the annual report, made some minor edits and agreed to accept it as amended.
Oh,
Planning
okay.
staff will select from some photos to include in it.
yes.
Great.
we just haven't seen it, is the only thing.
So we'll get the photos in it, and when we send it to the clerk, we'll distribute
then
it
we can vote.
to you all. But you don't have to see it to vote on it, so.
Yeah.
Great.
We've already voted. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing
Movement
it.
to adjourn?
I'm for it.
All right, let's adjourn. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Bye, guys.
Night all.